Vested Agents presents Real Estate Action Live.
Yes.
We're going to do something different. Multiple guests answering a single question.
This will be a fun, fast-paced hour with amazing guests.
And that is how you're going to win all day, is to empower your people.
Too many agents are trying to figure out, well, how do I get my buyers' offers accepted? It's easy. Offer the highest price. It's not rocket science.
When you're a realtor or you're doing something in real estate, you have to flip the view of what you're looking at, and you start looking at what other people are doing.
So it's really just personality based, and then having people learn the ropes in an effective way.
Focus on just being there for people and providing value.
I don't regret what I did because it really made me hustle and work hard.
Better than we've ever been. We just had our first six-figure month. That 70K just jumped to six figures.
I'm all about like building up your knowledge base, building up your mind, building up your spirit, and just slay the day.
We're always looking for people to come along and help us with our journey as well. We can also contribute and help them develop their skills.
Thanks for having me. This is super cool.
Yeah, great. No, it's been awesome.
It's an honor to be here. I appreciate you guys.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Haley. Thank you. Good stuff.
Trish, I'm so honored to spend time with you live, teaching thousands of real estate agents how to build their brand and not be a commodity.
All right, we're live.
We're live. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Welcome to Rehacking Live, where we meet the first Tuesday of every month and talk with several different real estate professionals. Today we have 6 guest speakers discussing out-of-state investing and the benefits of that. So let's just get right into it. This morning, first off, we have Sarah Weaver. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Sarah is a real estate investor that has bought many properties sight unseen from 7,000 miles away while living in New Zealand. So today, her portfolio includes 11 units, which is up from 3 units this year. So welcome. Can't wait to hear more.
Thank you.
How are you doing, Sarah?
Me. I'm good, really good. My scenery is a little bit different. I'm looking at a cornfield today. So I'm no longer in New Zealand. I'm now in the Midwest of the United States.
Yeah, a little different scenery, but it's still impressive. So I remember just it was LinkedIn, just watching your post, and I'm like, you're buying these properties, but you live in New Zealand. I'm like, okay, how does that work? So here we are. We got a whole show just on that. How are you successfully? I mean, because anyone can buy a property out of state, but how are you?
Yeah, they're little cash flow machines.
Yeah. So how are you buying these cash flow machines, like from out of state or out of country, 7,000 miles away? I know you're not that far now, but you did it before, and so how'd you do that, and how are you doing it today?
Yeah, I think the first is you have to be crystal clear on your criteria. And so when I get DMs on my Instagram, they're like, I'm looking to buy. And I'm like, great, where? And they're like, I don't know, Montana. Someone said Ohio's good, maybe Michigan. I don't want to ignore that person, but I'm always like, come back to me when you have clear criteria. Yeah. And so that's definitely what led me to be successful, is I was really clear on what I wanted. So I wanted not only small multifamily, but I wanted value add. I had it down to, if it was a duplex, I wanted this price point. If it was a quad, this price point. How much renovation was I willing to do? Because some people say, oh yeah, I'm willing to do renovation. And then agents are sending them gut jobs. And they're like, well, no. I was thinking more like painting the cabinets, not tearing out the kitchen.
Yeah. Important distinction there.
Exactly. So really being clear on your criteria and then sharing that with investor-friendly agents. And so that brings me to my next point, which is having a team. I mean, I wouldn't buy somewhere where I didn't have a go-to plumber, a go-to electrician, all of these people that are going to make you successful. Your team is so crucial.
So building a team, it's definitely a buzzword, especially, and it's absolutely, I agree with you. But for newer folks who've never bought a property, I get this all the time. Hey, I'm just trying to build my team, this, that, the other. Usually they're contacting me because I am an investor agent. Yeah. But what does that mean? Like, do you need that plumber before you buy the property? Do you need that property manager before? what does that mean to you? And
I
really,
think
what did you do?
Yeah, I think you need to have your financing in order. So you have to be pre-approved. So you have to have someone that will finance the property in that state. They can be local to that market, or they can be someone like the lender that I use. He's licensed in 30 plus states. But you need to have your financing in order, and then what I consider your investor-friendly agent, and that agent should have a stacked Rolodex. And so I really only like working with agents who own rental properties themselves, because then when I last minute need a cleaner, they're going to have someone. When I need someone, that agent is truly the glue that holds everything together. And hopefully I'm buying enough deals from them that they are getting their time's worthwhile. And so they're happy to share some of their contacts, unless that GC is working on their house, and then they're like, get in line, Sarah.
Okay, so this is extra emphasis, and hey, our organization is Invested Agents, but it was really because the agent that is an investor that's actively investing and or works predominantly with investors does bring they bring a ton of value, because they have that team. And so when folks are asking me like, hey, I need 60% deals, 70% deals, I'm like, well, one, I would buy those, but this is what I can offer. Like, you want contractors? Got them. You want electricians? Got them. You want roofers? Got them. You want to know how to get a foundation fixed and not pay triple or what everyone else is paying? I can absolutely help you there. Do you want to know what areas to avoid and what areas that we really love? I can help you there. So that realtor, that's an investor, it seems like that's really what you dug in, and you started there and kind of explored from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're worth their weight in gold.
Truly are. I mean, they're your market resource, but also almost like your investment advisor, at least in that area.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
all right, you've got the agent on the team. What next? Because you still have to buy the property. Well, I mean, you got to find the property.
You just write a lot of offers. So I have people messaging me like, oh, it's been so hard. And I'm like, how many offers have you written? They're like, oh, 3. And it's been terrible. I haven't been able to get anything. I'm like, call me when you've written
the last
30.
hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good job. Keep going.
Yeah. So just write a lot of offers. Not only is it good practice, but I mean, one will stick.
So I think the management aspect is probably the biggest hurdle to get over. So you can find an agent, which that part isn't that difficult. And now, of course, finding the right agent, that may take a few different conversations and such. But being able to actively buy a property and then manage it. Now, that means managing the project if it needs a make ready, whether that's paint or gut job, and then managing the fulfillment side, flipping. That part's probably not as difficult because you have the agent, but the property management, if you're going to hold it as a long-term rental or Airbnb, which I think you've got experience on both of those sides.
Absolutely. Right now I have, I always say, do as I say, not as I do.
Okay.
And I'm actually self-managing all 11 units. Which I hope, if anyone has me on a podcast next August, I hope that I'm not saying that any longer, because this is not scalable. But I like to be transparent that that's what I'm doing, because it is possible. And so I always say, like, if I can do this, imagine how easy it would if you just got a property manager. Everyone's so scared of out-of-state investing. And I'm like, no, you should be scared of out-of-state managing. But out-of-state purchasing and hiring a property manager, that's easy. Anyone can do that. But I have 2 BRRRRs going on right now, and I'm doing those remotely as well. And then I have an Airbnb. I'm Airbnb my primary. And so it's not technically out of state, but obviously I'm Airbnb-ing it while I'm traveling and away from the property. And so sometimes that is out of state.
There you go. I've toyed with the idea. Jamie has been a hard reject on. I was like, hey, look, we could actually go on vacation for a month and Airbnb our house and like vacations paid for. Haven't quite. I think I got a long uphill battle before I can convince her on that.
Yeah, I went into this property knowing that was going to be the case. So like my heirlooms or like my valuables are not out and displayed.
Yeah,
It's a little different.
That's a little different. Okay, so we've nailed down the agent, we've nailed down the property manager. Those being, it seems like the two pieces of the pie. Even though you self-managed, but you still understand the property management aspect is important.
Crucial.
You were able to do that, but you are also actively looking for that long-term solution, that third-party solution.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, frankly, if I found a great property manager in Des Moines, plug, I would hire one. And so, and with all that I had going on, that task just kept getting pushed further down the to-do list. And next thing I know, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm self-managing.
Well, you've been able to do that and go from 3 units to 11 this year, and start on the whole process 7,000 miles away from the subject property. Truly amazing. So I can only imagine, like, now that you're a little bit more local.
I have actually seen the properties now.
Yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see how the next 12 months go. So I appreciate it. These things always go super fast, but I enjoyed we had a previous conversation, enjoyed that, and this one too, and look forward to talking with you and kind of seeing that progression over the next few years.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you guys having me. I think what you're doing is really cool. I think every agent should invest, and investors should work with agents who invest themselves as well.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, awesome. Next, let's bring up our next guest speaker, Brian Alfaro. Brian, hi, thank you for joining us.
Chris, Jamie, thanks for having me.
Yes, we're excited to have you today. Brian, a little bit about him. He's a multifamily investor, a managing partner of Blue Oak Capital, and owner of Blockhouse Coffee, and that's local here.
That's right.
In Katy.
You got a couple locations.
That's right.
Yeah, it's amazing. So thank you so much for joining us, and take it away.
All right, Brian. So we got connected it was a couple years ago, and I don't remember the exact moment. I mean, there's all these networking events. I'm sure we bumped into each other then, or at one of those. You're a real estate agent. You're an entrepreneur. Own some boutique, really, really wonderful coffee shops, and then you're getting into multifamily investing.
That's right.
And I've kind of watched you over the past, I guess, I don't know if it's 2 years or so, and it's been fun. So, but you're not just investing in Houston, are you?
We're looking in a variety of markets. So I have ownership interest in an asset here in Houston, also one in Columbus, Ohio with a partnership. And then we are also looking in Tennessee and Kansas City, as well as San Antonio, which I guess you can say it's not out of state, but it's out of city because we're not there in San Antonio.
Correct. I mean, it's not like you can, I mean, it's 3.5 hours away, but it's not like you can just 10 minutes away, you can go fix a problem, nor would you on a multifamily unit, but the fundamentals are still the same. How are you successfully investing in, say, Kansas City, or you said Ohio, right? Like the out-of-state properties that you have, how are you approaching, like, hey, this is the market I want to go in, and this is how I'm going to acquire it. This is how I'm going to manage it. How are you approaching that?
Sure. That's a great question, Chris. And I think it's really important for everybody to understand that when you're going into a market, you have to understand the market fundamentals first. Before you call the agent, before you call your property manager, before you call your lender, before you find somebody who's maybe a potential partner, I think you really want to understand the economics of, what's driving the economy in that area. Because you and I both know, Chris, somebody could send you a deal in your inbox and you're looking at it and it's like, oh, it's $50K. That's amazing. Well, there's probably a reason it's $50K. I always say you get what you pay for, right? So you got to really understand the market drivers and the fundamentals before you go invest somewhere. There are questions you want to ask yourself, such as, is this a landlord-friendly state or city, right? If I'm going to have a problem with a tenant I have, whether I own a 200-unit apartment complex or I'm just buying a single-family house, you want to make sure you understand the laws and the rules there. You also want to understand things like population growth and job growth in that market. You want to make sure that you have to always begin with the end in mind. So even if you're a buy and hold investor and you plan on holding a property for 10, 20, 30 years, you have to really think about your exit at the end of the day. And the question you have to ask yourself is this going to be an attractive asset? Again, whether it's single family or a big apartment complex, when I decide to sell, if the market doesn't have great fundamentals, if it doesn't have the economic drivers that you want to see, it might not have a lot of buyers, which means you might buy it really cheap, but you also might have to sell it really cheap. So there's a lot of questions you definitely want to make sure you ask. So those are sort of where we start. And then after that, just to kind of piggyback on what Sarah just said, we really emphasize on building a strong team before we go knocking on doors, so to speak.
Yeah, going back to the $50,000 property and the value is subjective. So today in Detroit, maybe you can get a good deal. And I don't know anything about Detroit today, but I remember back in like 2011, like you couldn't even give properties away. It was like 10,000. Like
sure.
And it was in some otherwise, I guess, okay areas that had just been. I mean, they were ghost towns. So knowing the fundamentals of your market, but population growth. So as you've explored some of these markets for folks that are considering investing out of state, if you're in California, prices are probably quite a bit higher than some other markets. Same thing with New York. They're definitely higher.
Sure.
What markets are you seeing as attractive for the landlord or the passive type of investor that's looking to invest out of state?
Sure. That's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of landlord-friendly states. You can literally go on Google and type in landlord-friendly states, and there'll be like a Google image, and they're kind of color-coded, so that makes it nice and easy. But
Texas
just
will be one of the big shining ones on there, right?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. But the big obvious ones that are the elephant in the room. Texas is obviously a phenomenal state. We have I wouldn't call it easy, but our processes for eviction are not that complicated. 30 days or less, give or take. There's a lot of other landlord-friendly states. Most of them kind of reside in the Southeast. You're looking at your Tennessees, you're looking at your Carolinas. Oklahoma City is getting pretty popular from a real estate investing market. Kansas City is another one. Usually, just kind of the rule of thumb, and it's not stuck, but the East Coast and the West Coast, especially the farther north you get, those are going to be not landlord-friendly. So the states like you mentioned, California and New York, those are the ones that you definitely want to be careful. It doesn't mean you can't find investment opportunities there, but you definitely got to know what you're getting into.
Yeah, the fundamentals are going to be a lot more different if you're buying in Boston or New York than Atlanta, Tampa, Houston.
Yep.
The management aspect is definitely probably the number one. Like once you get a deal, and so getting a deal out of state's not that difficult. You can rely on boots on the ground, especially if you're working with brokers and agents that know what they're doing and have experience finding a good deal, analyzing a good one out of state. That part actually, at least to me, seems like it's the easiest portion. It's the management portion that can take your asset and make it worse.
Sure.
Or make it really, really rewarding for you and lucrative over time. How are you solving that problem whenever you're hundreds of miles away from your market?
Absolutely. Property management is so important. And Sarah was just talking about it, but we are not ones to self-manage, especially in the size of assets that we're looking at, typically 60, 70 doors on the small side. But even if you're looking at single family houses or you're looking at small multifamilies, I would encourage everybody who's listening to find themselves a really, really good property manager. The term that we use in our industry in multifamily and specifically is somebody that's boots on the ground. So whether that's somebody who's going to be a partner with you who can then network and find that local property manager, or you can just find that property manager that has an established footprint there. And you want to ask really smart questions. You want to make sure that you're vetting them. How long have they been there? How many units do they manage? You want to make sure that if you're buying small multifamily, that the operator, the property manager, can actually handle those small multifamily, because there's a lot of single family property managers that do an awesome job in the single family space, and they think their model is scalable and transferable. So yeah, we'll manage your 8 unit, we'll manage your 10 unit. And what you'll find is that it's very different. It sounds the same, like, oh, what's 1 to 5, 1 to 6? What's the big deal? It's very, very different. When you go above 4 units and you're in that 5 space, now you're in a commercial type transaction, and everything is NOI based, right? You're valuing these assets based on cap rate. So that's a different conversation that property managers aren't used to having. So asking those types of questions, depending on what you're buying, is really important. And you want to make sure you do your due diligence on these property managers, because at the end of the day, you just hit the nail on the head, Chris. You can buy a great deal. It can look great on paper. The numbers could work really well. But if you put a bad property manager on that property, it can kill the deal. And it's kind of the other way around too. You can buy a deal that's maybe, looks a little thin. It's still a good deal, but maybe it's a little thin, and they can exponentially grow that property and really make it a really attractive asset, so that when you're refinancing, or if you're finally, exiting, you can really capture that value on the back end.
And at least from the multifamily commercial space, it seems like that's the biggest game right now. Not so much the huge uplifts, although those opportunities, they're always going to be there, but is finding the property that it is a good asset, well run, actually has good numbers, but there's some opportunity there that the owner, for whatever reason, maybe they've capped out. They're not going to put the extra capital expenditures in that's going to take it from or take it to the next level. And they're leaving that opportunity for the next owner to bring their unique perspective, their plan of action is going to take it from, I don't know, 500,000 NOI to 625, which exponentially grows the valuation. And especially if you do that over a 3 or 5 year period, that good deal today is an even better deal 5 years from now.
Absolutely. And you want to find property managers that not only understand what you just said, but we try to find one that are very open to, you could have a whole another panel on this, leveraging technology, right? This industry is starting to change, especially on the property management side. And I think tenants in particular are starting to look for what we call resort style amenities. So even if you're, even if you have a duplex or a fourplex or a 10 unit, do you have smart technology in the home? Are you offering Wi-Fi? Are there Nest thermostats? What's the quality of customer service that you're really offering? And you want to make sure you align with a property manager that's not just fixing toilets and collecting checks. A lot of people can do that, right?
Quick comment there, and then we got to wrap it up. This thing's moved quick, but I've noticed that like the whole selling as is, especially on the single family, wholetailing, as it's commonly called. I've noticed that depending on the area, and you can still get really good prices on those, but if you're wholetailing to the retail buyer, we actually found, now this is pre-COVID, less desire over the years. And I was like, why is that? Like, these are good opportunities for them. It's because they're coming from a Class A apartment complex.
That's right.
Going from a Class A, like painting a house, like who wants to do that? Who wants to change carpet? Who wants to like swap out appliances for a little sweat equity? So, but yeah, good comment. So it's about the service, about the experience.
That's right.
Hey, thank you, Brian. Look forward to, I know you've got an event coming up. I look forward to possibly connecting with you again.
Awesome. I appreciate it, y'all. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Brian. All right. Next up, we have Luke Wong. Hi, Luke.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah. A little bit about Luke. Luke is an eXp Realty Associate Broker and commercial real estate investor. He has a portfolio of self-storage units, retail centers, and industrial properties. So we can't wait to get some great feedback from you about this topic. So take it away.
Good to be here. Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. When getting folks for this, this topic, I found as far as out-of-state investors, one of the commonalities was a lot of them that I know that are doing it in the multifamily or commercial space as opposed to the single family, which it can be done in any way. And I do know other single families. So you're in a different niche, being more traditional commercial, as in storage units, self-storage units, industrial facilities, and you've got some retail. So first, you've done a ton of flips over the years in single family business. How did you get from that to industrial? Or self-storage, like commercial?
So, so I started off, I'll just go a little bit before that. So I started off in land acquisitions, 2001 when I moved to Houston, with a residential developer doing subdivisions. So I was in charge of, finding the land. And then 2011, I started renovating and flipping houses. And as you know, the market was good from those timeframes, especially in the area I was in, Maryland, and it was, you couldn't buy them quick enough and turn them. Then 2015, the oil kind of slowed everything down, and for that price point is probably around 500,000.
And this is the Houston market, right?
Yeah, Houston market, and so the 500,000, retail value of the house. So those slowed down when the oil kind of slowed down, and then we had some floods like back to back, and then I had some health issues, and my dad passed. So that transition, when I came back to everything, 2017, because 2016 was kind of like a blur. I needed to assess the market and see what was going on. The Mireland market in Houston was no longer the way it was before. The whole industry as a whole, regarding renovating, was different. So I started going back to wholesaling just to see, where and what was happening where. And then that's when I started going into commercial at the same time and dabbling into investing passively into a storage facility, apartment complex, and shopping center. So then I wanted to narrow it down on one asset class so I don't spread myself too thin, and self-storage was it. And so I've been doing that, actively, probably about a year and a half. And I really like the space and just really learning a lot and growing. And, I know the topic today is kind of how to invest out of state. Well, one of it's passively. Well, let's see. So those that I invested, it could have been anywhere, but they actually were all in Texas. But yeah, at that point, it didn't really matter. And I know Brian had mentioned, your speaker before had mentioned, it's really good to have a good property manager. Kind of same thing. It's really good to have a good person that's kind of running the show on your passive investments. My motto is kind of like I've got the jockey over the horse. I pick a good jockey over the horse any day because they can make a mediocre horse win.
Yeah.
Or a bad jockey can make a great horse lose. And just like with property management for apartments, same thing can happen with any of these passive investments.
Some of the self-storage units, you self-manage, correct?
Yes. So
and self-manage with relative ease, from what I recall, at least past conversations.
Yeah, so I have one here that I acquired in October 2020, and it's less than 2 hours away. So it's not like I can jump in my car and visit it every day. I mean, I could if I needed to, but it's not like 5 minutes away where I can go check on it. So with technology these days and the systems and setting it up right from the beginning, a lot of it can be managed remotely because it's not very management intensive. The website, you can lease, look at the available units, the prices, manage your payments online. We have a call center that answers the phones. Well, I'm actually switching that now to actually have more of the phones come to me now so I can get a better grip and even squeeze it a little bit more because it's my facility. I'll know what I can do, what options, rather than if it's a call center, they can only do so much. And the place is pretty much 96% full, so it's not getting a lot of calls. But there's capabilities out there that, I mean, even smart key locks are out there. So as long as you still need some boots on the ground, some local good boots on the ground, which I'm lucky to have. I have 2 people over there that, I can text, call, and they can be at the facility probably within 5 minutes.
So just like some of the other guests mentioned, you because property management, I think throughout this entire show, we'll kind of understand that as being one of the most important pieces, at least long term. You've got, even though you're very active in the management still, even though you're far away, you have boots on the ground for the Johnny on the spot, whether it's a handyman or some type of assistant that can address issues as needed as they come up. Is that what I'm
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Because you're going to have those instances where I'm having trouble with the door. I need somebody to go there. Or you need the AC guy. There's the AC, something happened with the AC. Or, you're going to have somebody that's responsible and responsive that you can trust.
You named a few tools. So technology allows this. 20 years ago, you wouldn't. It's not that you couldn't do it, and investors, they did invest out of state at that time too. It's so much easier for just ordinary folks that we don't have billions of dollars and lots of staff in multiple states. Like, we can invest in different markets with ease. So, you mentioned a couple of the tools. What are some of the primary tools that you're using to effectively manage both the experience from the client side or the customer side, but also your end for data, financial, just tracking, security?
Well, yeah. So one of the main tools is finding a good self-storage management software, which is also my website. So it's, a vendor. I mean, I use Easy Self Storage. So that really, they have a great
Easy Self Storage is the title?
Easy Self Storage is actually the Easy Self Storage Solutions. They manage the website, which is also the CRM or your management tool, because it gives you all the reports, but it also gives you the ability to look at your dashboard. It also gives the ability for people to sign up online, look at your facility, manage their account online, purchase the additional insurance. There's texting back and forth. You can be on a waiting list. It really, it
sounds like that's a full suite. Like, if you're in self-storage, like that's something you need to look pretty hard into.
Yeah, I can just say go to the website, and it's easier to do that than for me to do it over the phone with the person on the phone, and because it has a mapping, it shows you exactly where your unit will be if you choose that unit. It's because we have 2 buildings, and that's a game changer right there. It's mobile friendly, so I can pull it on my phone anytime, and it works really well. It also has the access control in there, so I can control the doors and letting people in or locking people out.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Look, hey, these 10 minutes, they fly.
Yeah, it does.
But I know we'll definitely be talking a lot in the future as we start collaborating on some other things. So look forward to seeing you again soon.
Sure. Thanks.
Thanks, Luke.
Have a good one.
You too.
Okay, so that was awesome. Great info. Next, we have Feras Moussa. Hey, Feras.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good.
What's going on?
Not much, man. Not much.
Busy man over there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, I love the call center mic.
I know. Well, it's actually a really, really high quality headset. Actually, I really love, because I could do this, and it goes to mute, so it works out well whenever I'm double.
That's your Call of Duty. Like that's what y'all are really doing.
And then I don't have a green screen, unfortunately. So here, I'll turn around and I'll get you guys something better. There we go.
Okay, so he really has an office. He really works.
There you go.
All right, Jamie, go with the intro.
All right, just a little bit about Feras. Feras is a former Microsoft employee and tech enthusiast turned real estate investor. So he co-founded Disrupt Equity, which is a vertically integrated real estate investment firm with over 2,000 units acquired and 150 million assets under management. So that's pretty awesome. So thank you so much for joining us, Feras.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, Feras. So you were we were working on a project that never materialized, but
should have. It should have.
It should have. Amazon seemed like they were better. It was like we were kind of done with the concept, and then Amazon released like a 95.5% like mock-up. So okay, well, let's do something else. But at that time, you were like, hey, I'm kind of piddling with this like multifamily space and considering investing in that. And I was, Jamie and I, we were scaling our single family flips. So in hindsight, I should have been like, hey, let's go forward. But you built an amazing company with your business partner, and you've invested. Like, your very first investment in multifamily was out of state, right?
Absolutely.
So, and you talk more in detail about that on a Bigger Pockets podcast. So if you never heard of them, great podcast, go check it out. Ferris's convo with Bigger Pockets. But how did you effectively go from living in Houston, never buying a property out of state before, to buying your first multi-million-dollar project out of state?
It's funny. So it actually started with, even step back one other step, right? I was in Seattle. My very first purchase was actually a fourplex that's about 1.5 miles down the road from our office.
Okay, so you
and so I kind of started it early on, right? And it all boils down to people, right? There are people that want to do everything themselves, and there are people that are willing to partner, right? You need to have people around you that you can trust and lean on. And so whether it's me being in Seattle and I literally called up a random agent off of Bigger Pockets and had him, transact it for me. I had family go drive the property tour for me because I had not come out here. I came out to look at it, I think, whenever it was pretty much 2 weeks from closing, right? That's whenever I came out.
Just make sure it was still there.
Yeah, I had a friend go drive it. I had my brother and my parents, and you got to lean on people, right? And times that by 10 for multifamily, it's all a team sport. And so, buying a fourplex is very different than buying an apartment, in the sense that of the fourplex, it's not big enough to support a dedicated team, right? But with an apartment complex, right, it is. That first deal was a $4 million purchase, dedicated property management company, right? They had dedicated resources that are looking and breathing that all the time. And so, the buying is the easy part, right? I think your question is really about how do you manage that from remotely, right? And really, for us on that deal, we're doing a deep value add, right? We literally brought the property occupancy down to 40% and then brought it back up to 95%, right? Complete turnaround. And I mean, that's stressful, right? And in that kind of situation, it's not a clean, stabilized deal, right? It's the kind of deal
you're bleeding. Like,
absolutely.
You've got an artery exposed.
No, absolutely. And it's funny, Ben and I tell a story. We remember touring that deal before we bought it, right? So Dave's a question, pick a place to invest that you can easily get out to. First thing, Atlanta, there's literally 5 flights a day out there. We're out there on the 7 a.m. flight out there. We're back on the 7 p.m. flight back. I wake up and sleep in my bed, right? I can get out there. If you're out there, you called me, there's a problem, I could literally be out there tomorrow morning, right? It's easy to get out. I could be out there today if it's right now, probably the last flight, I think, was like 1 o'clock. It's easy to get out there. So that's the first thing, right? I'm not investing in, some random place, Bozeman, no offense to them, but like, it's probably 2 hops to get there, right? I'm going to burn the whole day traveling. And then the second piece is just, having a dedicated team, right? I remember touring that property before we bought it, and, literally tenants were throwing trash over the balcony out into that's literally the kind of property we bought, right? But you put a plan together, execute that business plan. And luckily with this day and age, you can do most of this remotely, right? It's beautiful. And, lean on people for the on-site things that you do need someone out there. And, I remember those first 8 months, we were out there every month. We were literally booking the flights out there, just dedicated and making sure things happen. And so, the biggest feedback to people is pick a good market, have good people around you, and just have a well-defined business plan and stick to that plan. Don't let everything, randomize you. It's really easy to get distracted, right? And just focus on these 10 things, and where you're going, and the next 5 steps. Don't worry about everything in between.
So a couple things, on-site management. That was one of the lessons learned when Jamie and I bought a 29 unit. It did not have on-site management. We used a resident manager, which is incredibly risky. Thankfully, as far as we know, she never stolen from us. Although she could have, did not like that. So the
problem with multifamily is a lot of money's coming in, a lot of money's going out, right? It's really hard to track it all unless you have buttoned up processes.
Yeah. And then people, Grant Cardone has said it, and he's probably not the only one, but he was talking about like you don't have a money problem, you got a people problem. Because ultimately, good people solve problems. When problems are solved, there's financial incentives for that, usually for everyone involved. How did you find the right? Because if that place was you brought it down to 40%, it was not running well, which means you solved the management problem. How did you find the people that were going to be able to solve that problem?
Referrals. Even right now, Ben and I were talking about this last night, about bringing in key strategic positions, right? And really only being willing to do it if someone's referred, right? It's really hard to know if someone's going to work out if it's just blind faith. The resumes mean nonsense. They mean nothing to me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like the best resume could be the worst performer and vice versa. And so, I mean, the biggest thing is about referrals. So whether that's hiring on an employee or hiring on a property management company. And so for us, it was a company that we know someone that was already in Atlanta. So that's why we picked a market that we knew someone was out there, because multifamily, it's all about relationships, right? Whether it's partners to get the deal done or people to operate. And so we had a friend out there that had already had deals in Atlanta, knows the market. He had a Rolodex that we could tap into, right? And that included property management. He had a couple of different ones. He had one that he liked. We went out there, we vetted 3 management companies, got to know this one very well. And, they can handle that type of asset class, right? And it went really well. It was definitely, chaos, right? It was a tough deal, but they performed, we did our part, and it worked out well. So, just it's referrals is key for that.
Love it. So we got like 60 seconds left. You're vertically integrated now, realizing some of the problems that are inherent in property management. I remember some stories you told me early on. Now you've got that in-house team that at least managers or creates the systems for effective property management. What are some of the key takeaways for others to consider? Like, not everyone's going to vertically integrate, but what are some of the things that folks should look for when they're, whether it's single family or multifamily, when they're trying to vet the right property manager for their asset?
Vetting a management company. Okay, so let's see. So first thing is, just look at their portfolio. Go ask them for deals that they manage, and don't tell them when you're going out there, but go look at them, right? See what's, and there's no management company is perfect. What I've learned in management is my bar was here. It's a really hard business, but get out there, go look at things, find people that are easy to get a hold of, right? And you have a business plan, but it's constantly evolving to some extent. And so find a management company that understands that and really understands your business plan. The reason we started our management company is we literally thought back on it. We'd never once had a management company that asked us, what is our business plan end to end, right? How are they going to help us execute if they don't even know what it is, right? No one ever asked. And so really get to know that. And it's people. And my last bit of feedback, I know we're short on time, is, same as employee, hire fast, fire quicker, right? We made the mistake of holding on way too long on a non-performing management company here in Texas. And we've paid that price. And that was a big mistake in the sense that extra 3 months can really make a deal go further south that you spend the next 6 months to recover from. So
it is. And in another podcast, I heard you mention that you have assistants actually call in and almost do like test calls to the property management team to make sure that they're answering calls and actually following up. I loved that tip.
Totally agree.
All right. Hey, thank you so much, Feras.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks, Feras. Awesome. Man, yes, good management company indeed. I remember our manager for our apartment complex. That was a learning experience.
The jokes.
We were very green, very new. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And we just had I just had a baby, and you were trying to manage in the hospital room. You remember that?
Yeah, it was a $500 million not $500 million. It was a $500,000 acquisition when I was 26 years old. So basically $500,000, got or $500,000 property that we had to sink. It was $180,000. We ended up investing in this thing because it was bad. We probably brought it down to like 20% occupancy. It was rough, and then when we got it running again, and learned more lessons. So
I know. I'll never forget holding our newborn baby boy and you on the phone trying to manage that. Anyway, moving on to our next guest. Hi, Don.
Hello. How are you guys?
Great. Wow. I'm so glad to have you. Don is like one of my favorite people ever. He's one of my mentors, I feel like, when Chris and I were scaling our flipping business. So a little bit about Don. Don is a real estate investor, coach, and host of Flip Talk. That's hard to say. Podcast. Don has gone from counting pennies to buy groceries to flipping hundreds of properties a year in a highly competitive market. And you're in California right now, but you also invest out of state, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So you've not only been successful, like going from like the rags to riches, or I guess riches to rags to riches, but doing it in a really competitive environment, surviving over that time, and not just surviving, but thriving, and then doing it in multiple markets. So when you went from like your just individual market to finally, jumping the border to a different market, like how did you approach that?
Well, I mean, initially, California is a large state. So when we started expanding from our main markets, we were looking at, markets that are, 3 hours north or south, or 4 hours or 5 hours south of us. So in the same state. And that's kind of our first iteration into going into new markets was, within the same state. The second market I tackled was the Eugene, Springfield, Oregon area. And the reason I chose that market initially was because I had family up there. And so I wanted to get comfortable with our processes and our systems and still have some controls in place. The next state we ended up venturing out into, my dispo guy actually moved a few hours from the market we were looking at. And it just made sense to tackle that state, and that state's in the Midwest. And now we're in states that I don't have any control in. So, but initially, I did it a little more conservative than I would say some people would. I made sure I had some relationship in the market that I was going into to allow me to kind of establish systems and processes that I felt comfortable with. And now, like I said, I'm expanding into. I'm trying to go countrywide at this point in time. So we're setting up some marketing campaigns to start tapping markets all over the country. Cool.
So really. Relationships and boots on the ground, that has been a key theme with other guests. So you've had that, whether it was family, an acquisition agent that moved, or it was relatively within driving distance if you had to go there. But you also probably still had resources there, but you are now going into other places where you have much less resources. So let's talk about those. How are you approaching going into, and I don't know what these markets are, but I'm like say Phoenix or I don't know, Chattanooga, Tennessee. You probably know people there, but you don't have any hard resources there. Like how are you approaching going into those markets?
Well, so one of the things that I've learned through the years is, people will talk about marketing and they'll talk about markets as if they're all the same. They all operate the same way, and they don't. There's a learning curve. There's things that make sense in California that buyers won't touch with a 10-foot pole in another state. So there's markets that are good for appreciation. There's markets that are good for cash flow. I'm sure you're relatively familiar with that. So, and you got to look at what buyers are going to respond to if you're going to wholesale, what buyers are going to respond to if you're going to flip. So the first thing we look at is there any demand in a market? Before we even look at a market, is there any demand? And to tell you the truth, Chris, we've lined ourselves up with institutional buyers, hedge funds, and different buyers that are fairly aggressive across the country. And so one of the things that I look at is, where are my institutional buyers at? If I'm going to go into a market, do I already have a buyer in place that I know their criteria, that they're going to be relatively well versed in explaining what their parameters are? Like, they're not going to buy houses older than this age. They're only going to buy in these zip codes. And if I have those buyers in that particular market, then I'm going to explore that market, because there's always this learning curve to what are sellers going to respond to, what are buyers going to respond to in that market. If I have a buyer that I know their fundamental buying criteria for a market, then I can enter that market and shorten that learning curve, if that makes sense. So we can get our feet in that market, start picking up property, to start getting momentum when we start branching out to other buyers.
Yeah, so you're understanding the macro fundamentals of a market,
right,
but also what does the consumer want? And the consumer for you, it seems like, is hedge funds or institutional buyers that are buying. I would imagine rental properties. It's probably or turnkey or
they're buying them as rentals. They're buying them as flips. And they're not the only buyers we end up working with long term in any market we're in. But we definitely want to have that relationship when we enter. So the one thing I don't want to do is not have an exit when I go into a market, an established exit. And as long as we have that established exit, we have, like I said, their formula for their buying criteria. And we already know, okay, we got these particular sellers to market to, and let's get in there and start learning who the players are while we're making money.
So are you doing any type of construction, make ready, uplift on these properties from acquisition to disposition?
We're not flipping per se, but we are buy and hold. Like we're picking up buy and holds in South Carolina. We're wholesaling in Tennessee. I'm looking at an Airbnb in Tennessee right now, options. So from the buy and hold perspective for rentals, we are doing, we're going in there and cleaning properties up and getting them rent ready, or we're getting them ready for Airbnb. We're not doing any fundamental flipping per se. If we're going to exit anything other than buy and hold or Airbnb, we're going to wholesale it.
So if you don't have hard assets local, how are you going in to establish those relationships and find the boots on the ground that that you can trust, that are qualified, like that know what they're doing, that's going to help you both acquire and just sell these properties?
So for the acquisition side of the properties, we do everything from our Fresno base. So we're doing everything virtual. For the acquisition side, we have our team locally here in Fresno run all of our numbers to make a decision as to whether or not the property is going to work for us, when we're making the buy. If we need to have somebody see the property, then we'll usually leverage one of our buyers. Again, institutional buyers are who we usually enter a market with, and we'll usually leverage that relationship. For them to go out and see, like we're going to set an appointment with the seller per se to see a property, because in some cases sellers will refuse to sign the contract unless you put your eyes on it. We'll actually leverage our buyer to go look at the property and have them put their number on it. Now that has some risks, per se. If you're working with the wrong buyer, they could go around you, they could give you, kind of false numbers. But again, we're working with established relationships we've had long term. We built some trust base with, and we know they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. And so that gives us some comfort in that portion of it. We do work with local property managers. For instance, we have some rentals in South Carolina that we've recently acquired. We did a lot of research on and got recommendations from people we trusted. Your network, if you're part of a good community, a good mastermind community, you usually establish a fairly decent network across the country. You rely on those relationships, which I did, to give me referrals for property managers or title companies to work with. And then we do our own conversations with those individuals to make sure that we're comfortable with them. And then we'll give them, kind of test runs. With one property manager, we said, go in, send us pictures, tell us what's going to cost to do this. She came back, it was really reasonable. We gave her a shot. We gave her a budget to go in and do the repairs and make it rent ready. Her turnaround time and the quality of work was good. She got it rented for more than she told us she was going to get rented for $1,800 a month. She got it rented for $1,900 a month. So we're going to start giving her more projects. So we don't put 10 projects on somebody. I'm a conservative investor. I'll give you one, and if you do well, then I'll give you two. And if you do well, then we'll start talking about more. So I don't usually give you 3 or 4 at a time. So that's we just kind of ease into it, And I don't want to say we take our time, because we don't take our time. We're very quick, but at the same time, we're not irresponsible about how we're doing it.
Yeah. In the last 60 seconds, 30 seconds, you're doing this all from a hub in Fresno, California. Well, what are 1 or 2 good tech tools that's allowing you to manage that kind of operation?
Having a great CRM in place is extremely important. I think follow-up is extremely important. Creating relationships and conversations is huge. Having a good, call rail or smartphone to make sure that all your calls are recorded with your team, so that way you can counsel and train your team properly. Virtual is a little different than belly to belly. And, Zoom goes a long way if you have sellers that, want to know if you're real. You can always jump on Zoom with a seller and have a face-to-face conversation with them when you're not in the same market. And of course, having a seller walk around the house, and FaceTime you to show your property. And we went as far as that, to just see the condition of a property to make a decision as to whether or not it was a good buy for us.
5 years ago, you'd never do any of this stuff. It's crazy how things have moved. So
no, it's nuts. And the belly to belly part of it, it's hard to give up the belly to belly part of things, but it's really not that much different fundamentally when you think about it. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Don. That's awesome.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking whenever he was saying that he had some in Tennessee, I'm like, it's all about networking for sure. And that's why I was glad we joined a mastermind back when, because we knew a lot of people.
It actually leads us to the next guest.
I know. So we have Stephen Libman. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, guys.
Thanks so much for joining us.
He's taking time out of a staycation, actually.
I did, actually. So I'm carving out some time to be with you guys, which I love. But yeah, we are taking the week off this week, so it's nice.
That's nice. Well, let me just say a little bit about Stephen. He is a managing partner of Integrity Holdings Group, which is a real estate investment firm with 150 million in assets under management that acquires institutional grade commercial properties. Steve's company also helps create passive income for nonprofit organizations. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
No, always. This morning.
Yeah, Steve, congrats. Like
almost
$42 million closed this week. How does that feel?
That feels good. I love the fact that you guys are a part of it. We've partnered with some amazing people across the country to close the biggest deal by almost 4 times than our last previous deal. So it's
that didn't take one call or one Zoom call or like a week of underwriting to do. Like this was a weeks and months of preparation and lots and lots of back end work to get this deal done. But let's backtrack before you go to that deal. Ultimately, your background, you were a real estate agent, very successful with that, real estate flipping, wholesaling, successful there, ended up moving into storage units. And I don't recall where those units were, but you did eventually move into out-of-state markets. How did you, what was the reason for doing that? And how did you make that leap of faith from not having the local control and the local assets and being able to do it from a virtual standpoint?
Yeah. So, I mean, the dichotomy was we were doing residential in state when we were in New Jersey. We flipped and wholesaled maybe 1,000 houses over 10 years. So it was a very different operation. When we switched to the commercial and we started building, we built 3 ground up self-storage facilities in Orlando, and they were all managed by CubeSmart. We partnered with an experienced operator, right? So we helped raise the capital into that deal and partnered with a guy who already had $200 million under management. He was boots on the ground, following what Don says. I mean, I'm sure you're going to hear the repetition over and over and over again. Partnerships and mentorships and, people on the ground are kind of what helps streamline this process. But so our partner, Sean, lived in the Orlando area. He was very much managing the general contractors on the ground up construction and managing the COs and the township and all that stuff.
So yeah, people in relationships has been a theme. And it reminds me, I've said it before, Grant Cardone, he said hey, you don't have a money problem, you got a people problem. You find the right people, that'll solve a lot of other problems. How are you finding these folks, whether it's that partner for the self-storage units or the one of the big partners that's involved in the Lake Forest project that you just closed?
Yeah, it's not magic. It's going out and finding people that are doing the things that you want to do and building relationships with them.
Wait, right? So there's work to it. It's not like a Facebook post.
It's not a Facebook post. It's a lot of, just phone calls. So look, everything in business, as we find out, is that it's about creating your tribe, having people that know, like, and trust you, and align with your own core values, right? When you can start there, then it's very easy to implement these other things, right? Business transactions become second nature once you have the personal transaction that's taking place, right? The personal relationships. So it's finding your tribe. And believe me, there's plenty of people out there that are doing this business that I don't want to partner with, right? And there's plenty of people in the business that I do. So it's going out, kicking tires, starting relationships, finding out what drives other people. And then not just what they say, but what they do.
Watching what they do.
The name of our company puts us a little bit in the crosshairs, right? Because the name of our company is Integrity Holdings Group. And people think initially 11 years ago, maybe we started the name of that business so that other people thought that we had integrity. And that's not the reason for it, by the way. We named our company that based on Proverbs. We're Christians, and we know that we have to answer to God at some point. And it was a reminder for us on our business card every time we handed it out that one day we'll stand in the judgment seat, and we better know who we work for. But that doesn't not put us in the crosshairs, right? So we are held to a higher standard because of our name, and we have to say what we're going to do and then actually follow through with action. And same thing with your partners. When you start to find these partners, you can start to see how people act, and they will tell you that their core values are one thing, but do they finish them out in an accountable fashion where you can see it tangibly working in their business, right? And then that's how you start to build those relationships. And that's the trust piece of know, like, and trust, right? I can know someone, I can like them, they can tell me all the right things. But if they don't follow through, right, with what they say they're going to do on the business side, then it's not going to be a fruitful partnership, right? And like it or not, you're probably going to go through one or two of those. But as you start to mitigate those relationships and find the people that you know, like, and trust, and find the people that align with your core values, then you can start to do deal flow with them, and you can see the people that are bringing deals and things like that. So it becomes easier to do things far away when your partners that you know, like, and trust are there, and you can trust them that they're going to do exactly what they say they're going to do.
Yeah, that's something like I'm a high D, like very more of a visionary, just go. But when it comes to partnerships, whether that's a JV or actually going in on a deal together as a general partner or a limited partner or whatever, I've been more cautious. Just because, like, I know the name I have, and especially if I'm going to involve anyone in my sphere, like, so you actually have the word integrity in your name. I don't, but either way, I still have to adhere to that. And I'm very, very guarded. So I've approached it in a way of, hey, I am going to develop a relationship, and we can take us for an example. Just watch. Like I remember a conversation you had as you were kind of moving out of single family, moving into storage units. Like, okay, well, let's watch. Let's see the extra acquisitions. Let's maybe see some exits. Let's see how they do propositions and how they handle multiple conversations and how they develop relationships over time.
Prove it.
Then, all right.
Yeah.
Let's do some business together.
Right. Absolutely.
But that's what everyone else is doing. Not everyone, but probably the most valuable partners you'll ever have. That's what they are doing.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, there's certainly a lot of people out there that say, hey, come partner with me. Right. And, a lot of guys starting partnerships and relationships and JVs and things like that. Maybe too early, right? I just heard Don say he's cautious, right? Your approach is more cautious, and it should be, because what you have is your name and your reputation, right? You only get one of those.
A marriage,
and you're married for 5 years.
You are getting married for a defined amount of time, and that can be fun and enjoyable or not.
Yeah. And it's why I like the multifamily space, separate from the single family space, is you're married, but it's still separated, right? Like, your entity owns a piece of the deal. My entity owns a piece of the deal. And in the operating agreement is how we're allowed to interact. So I like the fact that it really lays out the ground rules up front. When in the single family space, we used to bring in some investors, they would partner with us and we'd share profits, but then sharing profits meant maybe we had multiple opinions on granite
how you run
this,
how you steer
whatever, right? Yeah. And that's what I like about the multifamily space too, is it gives the opportunity for the people that want to be passive, and the people that want to be active, to be active.
Mm-hmm. Maybe 30 seconds. Any tips on if folks are especially starting out, they don't have that network, how they can go out and start meeting, and maybe some spots, whether it's a Bigger Pockets forum or whether they need to host a podcast or go into a mastermind or networking groups.
All of it, right? So if you figure out kind of what your niche is, I mean, this is the problem with, I think we are shotgun blasters, right, as entrepreneurs. So we want to go try a little bit of everything. And maybe you should in the beginning. I mean, frankly, we did wholesaling, we did flipping. Now we own apartment complexes. We built ground up construction. So we've done all kinds of stuff. Find out what you really like, find out what you're really good at, and then go find those people, right? I mean, we found our first mastermind, which is where we met via a podcast. And then I reached out to the guy who ran the podcast and he said, oh, hey, we have a mastermind. Why don't you join it? And we did. And then we created relationships. Don't be an entrepreneurial island. Go find your tribe. Go find the people that are doing what you're doing, whether that's in Facebook groups or podcasts or masterminds. Listen to a bunch of people that are doing what you want to do. Reach out to them and say, where should I go to learn more about this, right? And try to get in the room with some of those people. Now that conferences are starting to come back in a post-COVID world, like you can start to get around some of the people and learn what they're doing and how they went there. I mean, it's interesting because as entrepreneurs, we have the opportunity to get around people that are further down the road than us and then potentially eclipse them because we get to learn all the things from them and then run right past them, right? I mean, most of the people that I've learned from did like 1 or 2 deals in their first year or 2, and we've done 9 deals. And we're bordering on $200 million in acquisitions in 36 months just because we took all that information, packaged it up, shoved it into our business, and then ran down the street really, really fast. So it's really just to get around the right people.
Love it. Love it. Well, Steve, it's been a pleasure. Hope your staycation goes very well. It's very well deserved after
Thanks,
that type of close, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. All right.
Another one in the books.
Wraps it up.
So, first Tuesday every single month, we will be back. I think that's September 7th. Housekeeping, Facebook, we've had 2 pages, and I've been requesting for like a year for them to merge our pages, and they finally did. Yay! But they merged the wrong one. So in any case, it auto forwards to the right page. So if you're trying to reach us, you're probably, at least at this point, not going to miss the connection. You may miss some of the prior content. Don't worry about it. We'll get it up. You can always follow us on YouTube, Instagram. I'm on TikTok. And otherwise, reach out if we can do anything at all. If you got deals and you're looking to invest, happy to connect with you.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts, Jamie?
No, just thank you so much for our speakers. This was great. It gets me kind of pumped to invest more out of state, specifically my short-term rentals. So I know we're doing some apartment complexes, commercial, but I
know that there have been folks who take, say, a 50-unit apartment complex and they'll carve off like 5 as a short-term rental to boost that NOI up, which NOI, boost that, and so does value. So that's something that we can definitely explore as these opportunities. Maybe we take like one little building or one little section, like, hey, this is our short-term rental section.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And we're the owners, so we can do it, right?
Yeah. Let's get it done. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you to all of our speakers, and we will see you next time.
See ya.